Welcome back. I wanted to take a moment to talk about Flags of Valor. This nonprofit organization takes a standard flag for every service member who has died since 9/11. They place them in Forest Park, which is a massive and beautiful park. I think it's 2 or 2.5 times the size of New York's Central Park. It's a truly beautiful and massive park. I think the circumference, we used to run the circumference, I think it's about 6.2 miles. But the biggest hill in this massive park, they put all these flags and they're all dressed. They're all standing in formation symbolically. And attached to each flag is a photo of the service member who died and a dog tag of their death date and their unit. And they're organized by death date. So essentially, you can go to the beginning of your year or however long of service and you can walk down your entire deployment or deployments. It's sort of like the Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans Wall Memorial that's in Washington, D.C. for Vietnam veterans. When you stand way far back on one of the hills and look at the whole thing in its totality, it's very powerful, very moving. I've attached some pictures to this post. The first time I went some years ago, I actually stumbled upon it. I didn't know what it was. My wife and in-laws were actually taking a bike ride from our house up to Forest Park, about 3.5 miles. And when we got there, we got to the core of Forest Park and saw all these flags, and I was really surprised, and we heard this clinking. And again, for me, this was a random holiday weekend. I hear, thousands of flagpoles clanking. We get closer, and interestingly, the first flag that we came up to was the last soldier to die on our deployment. It really caught me off guard and was actually very, very startling. And I realized what it was that it was this commemoration of fallen soldiers. I was actually quite stunned. It was really emotional for me, and it was great in the sense that I, as an Afghanistan veteran, can now share a little bit of something like the Vietnam veterans have with the wall that's in DC. But this time, experiencing it and standing back and looking at all those flags, it really made me think, with everything that's happened and happening with Afghanistan, and with everything that we're learning from resources such as this book, what is this really all about? It seems the United States has been systematically taking not the best approach to war and to combat. And to look at all of these soldiers who have died and given everything that they have, it's just really hard. It's really, really painful. But here's the thing, just like on an individual level, a lot of times people have to be in a lot of pain before they're really ready to actually change. That the level of pain usually dictates the level of motivation and commitment and determination and intensity and consistency of practice to create a different change to get out of that pain. Which is one of the big reasons why I've taken it upon myself to study the virtues and study character and character building and deliver that information to veterans, because we can grow one of two ways. We either grow voluntarily through the study of character and virtues and habits and goals and proper goal setting and setting deadlines and strategies and working our way towards those goals and imposing these limitations, not diluting our efforts and our energy by having too many interests, but through the process of sacrificing parts of our lives and parts of our interests to focus in on specific things that we want to forge and grow and cultivate on purpose. That makes us stronger. That if we look at a big goal, a goal that we're not even sure that we can accomplish, that goal is going to highlight certain weaknesses or underdeveloped character traits, and the habits and actions and commitments and consistency that those are going to require, those things are going to force us to grow. Or we can be lackadaisical, laissez-faire, we can ignore, we can deny, we can be passive, we can just float along. And life will continue to present us with bigger and bigger adversities, which will eventually force us to take this route, forcing us into consistency, forcing us into the determination to alleviate the pain, because the pain and the suffering and the adversity eventually forces us over here, whether we realize it or not, to set certain goals. And oftentimes we're so focused on looking back at the pain or the adversity that we don't realize that what we're actually doing is clawing to get over to this lane. Meanwhile, the people over here that are lazy and laissez-faire look at the people over here that are the high achievers and think that they're psycho, that they're crazy, that they don't have any leisure time, that they don't enjoy anything, and blah, blah, blah. But all this discipline is actually just habitualized action. So eventually it becomes more effortless. But this group over here looks at them, thinks that they're crazy and that they've just been born that way when they haven't. They've just done proper habit building and built a super strong foundation. While these people over here, this group continues to look at this higher achieving group. But really what they're looking at is that this group is just working to get ahead of the curve. While this higher achieving group looks over here and it sucks to see people, they're getting drug along that curve. They're just behind the curve, but that curve is dragging them along and grinding them up. Both groups have it hard. What people don't realize is that you've got to choose your hard. This is going to be hard. This is going to be hard. I am focusing on helping bringing these tools, these ideas, these techniques to veterans so they can do more of their life on purpose, so they can maximize more of who and what they are, so they can impact their relationships, their community, their professions more on purpose in more massive ways. But here's the thing, it's easy to look at all those flags and feel not good feelings and consider what's going on in Afghanistan today and feel not good feelings. But again, I have a lot of exposure to a lot of different veterans from a lot of different eras, and just like the Vietnam veterans will point out, when they were returning from Vietnam, they were largely rejected. They were spit on, they were called baby killers, and they muted their military service. They would apply for jobs, they wouldn't list their military service. As an example, one time I was doing this group, and Bob, let's call him Bob, he was in our group. He'd been in my group for months, and in walks a brand new veteran, we'll call him Fred. Fred and Bob immediately light up and see each other, and unknowingly they had been working side by side for, 25 or 30 years for the same company, seeing each other regularly, but they had no idea that the other had been a Vietnam veteran, because that literally was not something that you talked about. It was something that you muted. It was something that if you had military tattoos, you tattooed over them, you hid that. That was the state of being for the majority of Vietnam veterans. The American public turned on them as if they were the ones that thought it was a great idea to go to war, that they were the ones making the decisions. Whereas now what's happening, the public is really, really upset with the administration. How could we do that with the military? They're not upset with Afghanistan veterans. And to me, and to many veterans, when you step back and look at this, that seems like society and our culture has learned a lot of hard lessons. And it can seem mystical, because when did we learn and how did that go, or how did that evolution go? It's just been so subtle and nearly imperceptible, but here we are, Afghanistan veterans reaping the rewards of the pain and suffering of Vietnam veterans. So to me that shows that we are continuing to learn lessons and grow. And considering how much pain and suffering we are in now, I hold out hope that we are going to be even more motivated to learn even more lessons on bigger platforms. So when people like me and people like you and other veterans in the couple of decades, 2, 3, 4 decades, we are in those higher positions of power guiding our country, and the people that are in positions of power now have died off, so they can't impact politics and military decision-making processes, that we will have learned those lessons and we'll be able to make different decisions. Another huge asset that we have is social media and how connected we are. After the war was over, it wasn't too popular to talk about, so 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20 years went by before we were really discussing Vietnam and the alleged lessons learned from Vietnam, and before the facts were washed and cleaned and propped up into neat little sections, put into history books, and disseminated and distributed to the masses. We are learning those hard lessons now. That washing process is not going to be as intense. We are seeing greater and bigger truths right now. We are eating it, and it sucks. And as much as it sucks, again, as much pain as it is, that I truly believe that pain is literally a symptom of change. It is a consequence of change. So if that pain is here, that change is already happening. And again, it may be imperceptible or so very, very subtle, but at least from my frame, my personal experience, that pain is a symptom of change. But if you're interested in Flags of Valor, you can go to flagsofvalorstl.com. On their Our Story section, it states they were founded in 2011 to honor and remember the heroes and victims of 9/11. America's Heartland, I guess that's a nonprofit, is a nonprofit organization that has expanded its focus to include honoring the memories of service members who have lost their lives. Since inception, the foundation has donated more than $500,000 to various military charities, including the Simplify and America's Fund, Missouri Military Memorial Foundation, Greater St. Louis Honor Flight, and Patriot Training Foundation. The organization also published the book Under One Flag in 2014. Flags of Valor event occurs every 5-year anniversary of 9/11. So every 5 years, Art Hill will be decorated with all these flags. It's a very moving experience. There's long lines of tables that you can receive information. They have a bunch of volunteers that are educated. It's really great to visit. So head over to their website or social media accounts or even St. Louis Forest Park and check it out sometime. But remember, these topics are tough topics, and we really have to fight to reflect and refine what we actually believe and what it actually means to us. Too many people are floating along and just borrowing meaning from other and different resources. Actually think for yourself, create that reality for yourself, that meaning and that purpose for yourself. It's challenging, but once you do that, you will increasingly be more powerful. You will have more solidarity within yourself. You won't be thrown into the wind and winds of news and happenings. You will have this internal compass, this internal GPS that is much more solid, that impacts your environment instead of your environment impacting you.